Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Temple City Council for Thursday, April 17th, 2014. Please rise as Dr. Ken Ritchie with First Presbyterian Church in Temple leads us in the invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Shelley Fowler, Deputy City Secretary.
Let's pray. O living God, on this Holy Thursday, when the triumph of death seems inevitable, and the challenges around us make us want to retreat or turn away or lash out, help us to commit to the new command given by Jesus, to love as he loved us. In these chambers where power brokers meet, empower the voice of wisdom and truth, life and justice to be heard and followed. And in the forgotten corners of our community where the powerless and the poor daily walk the valley of the shadow of death, send us forth in love and compassion and giving. In our sanctuaries we remember, O God, your gift of life to all humanity. May we carry it openly to the streets with empathy and wonder. In our sanctuaries we remember, O God, your invitation to belong and find peace. May we carry it openly to the streets with compassion and joy. In our sanctuaries we remember, O God, your reign of justice and righteousness. May we carry it openly to the streets with honesty and goodness. In our sanctuaries, O God, your sacrifice of love and mercy we remember. May we carry it openly to the streets with humility and kindness. And in our sanctuaries we remember that all that you have done for us, O God. And we remember also your call to live what we sing and pray. So may we carry it openly, this good news of your reign when things will be on earth as they are in heaven. And when your will be done in the north and the south, in the east and the west, from the sanctuary to the streets. So in defiance of all that would oppose your reconciling purpose among us, help us to choose again to follow Christ, who emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness, humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And so we pray at all times in Christ's name. Amen.
Help me say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. So time for public comment. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to this meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken by the council. Mr. Chris Coleman.
City Council, citizens of Temple, it has come to my attention that Judy Morales has retained an attorney who will help her regain her seat on the council. Let me be very clear, she was charged with a crime that proves she cannot be trusted to retain a seat on the council. The crime she was not charged with because of the statute of limitations show that she feels like she scapegoated the system and it fuels her push to retain her seat in May. This tells me that she feels she is above the law. If we allow her to retain her seat, we are sending a message that it is okay to commit a crime when you sit in a place of power. Let me ask you all personally, will you let her resume her seat if she chooses to do so? If so, I will tell you now that it will send a message that you support corruption in power. I have no doubt that you are all good people, so I appeal to the good inside of all of you and ask you not to allow her to resume her seat. I would also like to bring to your attention that some of the cops in this city are using their badge to circumvent the law. I've seen personally cop cars that turn their lights on and run a red light or a stop sign, then as soon as they're through the intersection, they turn off their lights and resume their speed, which tells me that they are not responding to a call. I would also like for you to ask the police officers of Temple to stop harassing the citizens of Temple as I have been stopped 3 times, twice at night for walking 1 block from my house to Dairy Queen for looking suspicious. I think I'm only being stopped because of my affiliations with Open Carry, Texas. I'd like to also note that I was unarmed when I was walking down the public sidewalk. I would like for the officers of the city and the police department to have a working relationship with us. Don't tell them not to talk to us when we approach them nicely, as it alienates us and makes us feel like a criminal. It's time to take back our city and clean it up and send a message to the people that you do care, and when it comes to corruption, that dog won't hunt. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. See, both CJ and Emily Grisham have signed up, but there was an arrow. Would y'all? All right, ladies first.
Emily Grisham, 4365 Airport Trail. I just want to thank the city for responding to my inquiry about the air show. However, not all things were covered in the response that I got. The answer that was received was that the city blocks off the roads and stuff for the safety of the citizens, and that we are still able to do our work because it's the private, concerning the private property. It does not show me where a law or a ordinance where the airport is allowed for an air show to dictate to private citizens to keep them off their property. We're not talking about the BLM here. You know, the property in question, it's not in question of who owns it. It's Grisham property, and the stretch that's in question is also, it's between 2 cattle guards, and it's owned by the Grishams up until the airport fence, including the road. So if we wanted to, we could even put gates up to block everyone out. So when the air show happens, that little chunk, the little corner that they try and keep us off of, it wouldn't matter anyway. It doesn't seem to have been a pressing issue since they've only been doing this for the last 2 years, where they've said that they wanted roadblocks there. And I know that the air show has been going on for many more years than that. I appreciate the city finally picking up their roadblock, but again, my question was not fully answered. And until you actually work on a farm that manages hundreds of heads of cattle, you can't say that they're able to do their jobs when those roadblocks and the officers, they make it more difficult than it needs to be for 3 days and the time that it wastes for them. The air show, it stresses out the cattle. They have to work really hard and be diligent in watching them so that they don't stampede over those cattle guards that are put in place for them. And there are actually 3 cattle guards that are right there in that area by the airport. They have to work around the roadblocks. They have to work around the officers that are put in place. And there are 2 officers that are in place for those 3 days, which is in a couple of 100 feet from each other. And I know, at least if you're saying it's done for safety, I know those are the only 2 places that have officers right there on duty like that. And if that's the case, then it just feels like that it's only more of a Grisham issue than it is a safety issue. So I would still like to know where it says that there's a law that that's what the airport can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grisham. Mr. Grisham?
CJ Grisham, 4365 Airport Trail, and I'm going to try not to take my 3 minutes this time. I do want to piggyback off something she said, because I did read the letter that we got from the city that said that, you know, these roadblocks don't keep us off of our own property. Last year, as I was going home, I was basically told to turn around and take a 3-mile route around to come in the other way to my house when my house was less than a quarter mile away. So to say that we're not being turned off of our own property is a lie. And for the record, I ignored the cop and went around him because it's my property. Anyway, that's not what I came to talk about. I also want to talk a little bit about what Chris talked about. And right now it's just rumors, so I may be talking to the wind. But if it's true that Ms. Morales has hired an attorney to regain her seat because this is a mere misdemeanor that she's charged with, I just want to highlight the irony that I, too, was charged and convicted with a misdemeanor, and I can't carry a gun concealed. And obviously I can't carry it openly, a pistol. That seems to me like a city council position has a lot more trust and There's a lot more power involved. And she wants to say that it's a mere misdemeanor, and yet the state will take away your gun rights if you're charged with a misdemeanor. But she somehow thinks it's okay to sit back on a city council. Maybe what we need, and this is probably something that I hope the city council charter committee can work on, is maybe if a city councilman is convicted of a misdemeanor, they should lose the ability to run for office for 5 years, the way concealed handgun licensees lose their license for 5 years if they're convicted of a nonviolent crime and of a misdemeanor. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Now we have a proclamation and a special recognition. At this time, could I ask Officer Bradley Perrin to come up, and Ms. Joy Schneider, would you mind coming up as well? Come on up. We're not too scary. And Councilmember Schneider wants to start this off, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd like to compliment Officer Perrin on, I guess it was the 10th of this month, in helping to save my 6-day-old grandson. In a day where there's much negativity and good deeds go unnoticed, I am very glad to honor a man that did not just do his duty, but he went out of his way and showed compassion, kindness to the people that were hysterical with fear. Last week, our 6-day-old grandson had an episode where he quit breathing, and my wife was frantic in trying to take this young man to the hospital, and she when she approached my grandson, he wasn't breathing, and she got into the car with my daughter and took off down the road, and by the time she got to Midway, Officer Perrin had a vehicle that he had just stopped and finished his business there, and she pulled up to the vehicle and honked her horn, and Officer Perrin calmed her down. It was a pretty tense situation. He calmed her down, got the things under control. Of course, I couldn't be there at the time, and he took control of the situation and thought with common sense and to get them to the right facility. And in his thinking, there is a Valero station right there on Midway, and it was by the grace of God an ambulance that was a clean ambulance had stopped there actually to get a soda. The driver did, and Officer Perrin recognized that was the quickest way to get this young man some help, and so he directed my wife and my daughter and my grandson to this paramedic in the ambulance, which stabilized my grandson and ended up getting him to the hospital and emergency room, and actually followed my wife and my family to the emergency room and got there actually before I could get there. And you might say that this is his job, but it's the way you do your job. It's not your job. It may be your job. It's the way you do your job and how you treated my family. Not only he walked her to the emergency room. Of course, my wife was so afraid. They were working on my grandson, and she couldn't even fill out the paperwork. Officer Perrin actually helped to fill out the paperwork. I don't know if you spelled everything correctly, but she got it done, and stayed there at the needs of my family until they had everything under control and offered them water and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that you got recognized for a deed that you did well, and I'm proud to have you on this police force and represent the city of Temple.
Great.
And by the way, my grandson is in the audience, and he is doing better. He's out of the hospital.
Do I get to read my proclamation? This is it's a little anticlimactic at this point, but I'm sorry. If I could very proudly present this proclamation from the office of the mayor. Whereas the city of Temple and Councilmember Russell and Joy Schneider are proud to recognize Officer Bradley Perrin for the recent act of heroism that saved the life of their grandson. Whereas in a day and age where there is so much negativity, it's easy to let kind deeds go unnoticed, and Officer Bradley Perrin showed compassion and kindness to people who were hysterical and struck with fear. Whereas on Thursday, April 10th, 2014, the 7-day-old grandson of City Council member Russell and Joy Schneider had an episode where he could not breathe. As Joy raced for help, she flagged Officer Perrin down on the side of the road, and his quick thinking directed them to an ambulance that was parked only a few yards away. Whereas not only did Officer Perrin stay by their side while the paramedics worked on their grandson, he continually made sure they were all okay while they stood by trying not to fall apart. Whereas once their grandson was stable, the paramedics took their grandson to the hospital, where Officer Perrin continued to be caring and supportive while they waited for news from the hospital staff. Whereas some may say it was his job, but in the midst of a chaotic situation, the good Lord placed in their paths a caring person who went above and beyond the call of duty. Whereas words of thanks do not adequately describe how much this family appreciates his quick thinking and kindness. Now therefore I, Daniel A. Dunn, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby recognize with gratitude Officer Bradley Perrin, badge number 516, for his courage, compassion, and kindness shown on April 10th, 2014. Thank you, Officer Perrin, for all you do to make Temple a safer place to live. In testimony whereof I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this is the 17th day of April, 2014. Thank you, Officer Perrin. That was fun. Yeah.
Hard to get through.
Absolutely. We have an annexation public hearing. Item 4, public hearing. Receive municipal service plan and conduct a public hearing to receive comments on the possible annexation of a proposed Lakewood Ranch subdivision on a 136.576 acre tract of land located to the north of the Highlands and west of Windmill Farm subdivisions, abutting the city limits boundary to the north and west, situated within part of the John J. Simmons Survey, abstract number 737, and the George V. Lindsay Survey, abstract number 513. Mr. Chandler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The whole purpose of this first public hearing is really twofold, and that is to present the municipal service plan, which we've circulated all the various departments that provide city services, and had no issues with it, but also to provide an opportunity for comments from the public. And just to show you the general location of this particular piece of annexation, you can see that this is actually the Morgan's Point ETJ, the faint yellow. So it's really kind of the northwest extreme corner, or would be, upon annexation, just to the west of the Windmill Farm subdivision, which is west of 317. And here you can see the survey of the 136 plus acre piece of property for the annexation. And so once again, that's Windmill Farms to the east. Southwest corner, that is the campus at Lakewood, which is one of the most recent voluntary annexations, also part of really the same development, which is done by Keela. And the second public hearing will occur on Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. here in the council chambers. Now, this request will also dovetail with a zoning request, which will be considered by Planning and Zoning Commission on May 5th, and that's a request for all of this property and then some other acreage that is already in the city limits for an SF2 zoning request. And so these will come together at City Council on May 15th for the annexation and the zoning for the first reading. Second reading will be on June 5th. And as we've discussed in previous voluntary annexation cases, of course, the schedule is determined by state statute. I'm not going to go over this entire calendar for you, but this lays out all the deadlines as determined by the Texas Local Government Code. beginning with the petition that was approved by City Council on the 3rd of this month, and that's Chapter 43 of the Local Government Code. And the Municipal Service Plan addresses standard city services, and once again circulated to all relevant departments, and there were no issues. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The applicant is here as well.
Just a reminder, this is a voluntary annexation. Council, any questions? All right, this is scheduled for a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. And once again, I'll remind everyone that the second public hearing will be Monday, April 21st at 8:30 a.m. in the council chambers. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, the consent agenda, are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately. Council, this is item 5A through 5W. Are there any items that you wish to remove for separate consideration or discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 5A through 5W.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of the consent agenda items A through AW.
Second.
A motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. The regular agenda under ordinances, item 6, public hearing and the first reading. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the abandonment and conveyance of a 95-foot by 80-foot section of South 9th Street right-of-way, being a .17-acre portion of land is measured from the south right-of-way line with West G Avenue situated between Block 39, Moore's Addition, and Block 62, Original Town of Temple, as more fully described in the attached exhibit for the development of the Salvation Army Center of Hope Transitional Shelter. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Again, this is a request through the Salvation Army, and the Center of Hope Transitional Shelter is actually being proposed with a separate conditional use permit that is scheduled for Monday to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission on May 21st, and will be before you on May 1st to coincide with the second reading of this abandonment. For the abandonment itself, the private utility providers servicing the area were notified. No objections were received. There was a 6-inch city water line within the area to be abandoned. That has since been relocated and was confirmed by the utility division. Market value for the area being abandoned is approximately $6,100, and as part of this does include the conveyance of that right-of-way. Just a depiction of the area to be abandoned. We have 9th Street, which would come down this direction, and West Avenue G, the area which is approximately 7,600 square feet, to be abandoned in the area in yellow. Staff is recommending approval of the Salvation Army's requested abandonment and conveyance of the 95 by 80-foot portion of 9th Street right-of-way south of its intersection with West G Avenue. And that does conclude my presentation, and I'm available should you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Council, questions? This time I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. There being no comments, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading of this ordinance.
Motion to approve item 6 of the regular agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 7, first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing amendments to the City of Temple's Water Conservation Plan.
What you have before you today is
the requirement of Title 30 under the Texas Administrative Code that each water supply system has to have a water conservation plan. It was initially adopted in March 2000, and that included a drought contingency plan. The water conservation plan was updated in 2009, and the drought was just updated just about a year ago in 2013. And you have to update the water conservation plan and submit it to the state every 5 years. So the proposed revisions that we've done have just updated the data and now currently reflect the practices we do. It provides a mechanism to develop and implement practices to reach goals established in the plan, and the main objectives are to reduce consumption of water, loss and waste of water, summertime peak demands, improve efficiency of the water, and increase recycling and or reuse of the water, but most importantly, to extend the life of the current water supply. The goals are established on a 5 and 10 year basis, so we're looking at setting goals for 2020 and 2025, and that would be based on a 1% reduction in gallons per capita per day per year, assuming an average rainfall. That is what is recommended by the state, so we would target 190 and 180 for 2020 and 2025 for our gallons per capita per day. Overall, the methods that are proposed within the plan to do this are actually just the same ones that we've already proposed prior to this in the previous plans. Improve the metering at our raw water intake, continue replacing our meters, and conduct monthly audits of our water system, continue to repair leaking water lines, improve public awareness, and continue evaluation of the rate structure, use of reclaimed water, and prohibition of wasting water. So that's basically the plan for you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Council? All right. This time I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading of this ordinance.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 8, consider adopting a resolution authorizing approval of the final plat of Shiloh Terrace, Phase 4, a 28.84-acre, 3-block, 43-lot residential subdivision with requested exceptions to Unified Development Code regarding park fees, extension of streets, and residential subdivision entrances, as well as Chapter 12 fire prevention and protection regarding number of required entrances, of which is located north of Sparta Road and west of Waterworks Road in Temple's western ETJ. Ms. Liley.
Yes, and I have a picture of the plat on the screen. It's actually a two-page plat. The first page is the cover sheet, and it just shows the vicinity map and then the signature blocks on it. And then here is the second page, which actually shows the development, and there's a little match line. Basically, this development is in the ETJ, and it only accesses off of the Waterworks Road. It's the last part of a development that has already been established. And just to give you some background, this plat was actually deemed administratively complete by DRC on March the 10th, 2014. It is, as you mentioned in the item description, a 43-lot, 3-block residential subdivision. Because it's in the ETJ, there's no zoning district associated with it. This development will have water provided through 6-inch water lines, and the development will be serviced by the septic system. In regards to the requested exceptions, the first exception to UDC Section 8.3 for parkland dedication is basically to waive the required park fees in the sum of $9,675, and that's calculated at $225 per dwelling. And the applicants have asked for this exception based on the fact of its location in the ETJ, and also the fact that previous development in this area also received exceptions for park fees. The second exception deals with UDC Section 8.2.1.d.4b, and it's in regards to projection of streets. And basically, since this subdivision is located basically in kind of an infill situation, it's at the end of a subdivision that's already been developed. They don't really have a lot of options as far as openings and the spacing, but they have provided a stub for adjacent development, and also that creates the potential for extension back to the entrance off of Waterworks Road. So that is one of their exceptions. Also, they're located pretty close to the Ballora, Fort Hood area. The next exception is for UDC Section 8.2.1.d.3. It's for the residential subdivision entrances, and also this is coupled with Chapter 12 of the Fire Prevention and Protection Article 4 revisions of the International Fire Code 2009, Section 12-10. And this is basically dealing with the number of entrances that are required for development. With this development supplying or proposing 43 additional lots, it basically triggers additional entrances into the subdivision. But because the entrance only has one entrance off of Waterworks Road, they've asked for this exception. But listed in this request also are considerations for the stub that I mentioned previously. The stub for future development would allow for an additional entrance. And so because of that reason, staff is in support of these exceptions. And so staff is recommending approval of the final plat of Shiloh Terrace Phase 4 with the applicant's requested exceptions. At the March 17th, 2014 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended with a vote of 6-0 for approval of this proposed plat with the developer's requested exceptions. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you. The applicant is also present if you have any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would approve for approval of regular agenda item 8.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. Item 9, consider adopting a resolution establishing a charter review committee, appointing the committee membership, including a chairperson and vice chairperson, and charging the committee to perform a comprehensive review of the city charter. Mr. Graham, may I ask you first to explain?
Sure. At our last meeting, we discussed placing an item on this agenda to appoint I think we talked about a 27-member charter review committee. By statute, if your goal is to call this election for the uniform election date in November 4th, we would have to complete this 71 days before, call the election 71 days, so we need to call it by the end of August 26th, I believe. So with 2 readings of that ordinance, we need to have, in both of our August meetings, have a reading of the ordinance. So the resolution in your packet would create the Charter Review Committee with the charge of completing their work by July 15th. That'll give you 2 or 3 weeks as well to review their recommendations. And as we discussed, the council is the final judge of what to place on the ballot.
Thank you. And also at the last workshop session, I asked the council members to come up with each council position having 5 names of a fair representation of what our community is made up of. And at this time, I would like to ask each member of the council to read the members that they've selected from the applicants that we've had come in, and then I'll be responsible for District 2, and as well as my positions in the chair and co-chair. So I'll start off with Councilmember Davis.
Mr. Mayor, I've asked Michelle Fettig, C.J. Grisham, Rosa Hernandez, Artie Polchinski, and Bruce Walker to serve as representatives from District 1.
For District 2, I selected Mr. Manuel Alanis, Bishop Dwayne McBride, Ms. Dorothy Powell, Mr. Richard Schneider, and Ms. Alicia Dawson. Councilmember Cloud.
Mayor Dunn, I had a lot of good interest from lots of good people, and I was pleased with that, and I think there is a lot of interest, and I'm proud to recommend the following names. I had to cut the list down from what I wanted, but I do have 5 very good people in mind. There'd be Harry Adams, Mr. Thomas Baird, Ms. Sanjanette Crossley, Jan Janzak, and Dan Jones.
Councilmember Schneider.
Mr. Mayor, representing District 4, I too had many names and I did a lot of cutting down, but my representation would include John Keela, Larry Wilkerson, Karen Matus, Pilkington, and Bob Browder.
Thank you. My selections are Mr. Tony Jeter, Reverend Roscoe Harrison, Mr. Jason Parks, Mr. William Leake, and Dr. Y.B. Rao. My suggestion for the chair of the committee is Dr. David Yielding, with the co-chair being Ms. Tanya McKesker-Reed. If those are acceptable to the council, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I make a motion that the names read out for each district, including yours, that we approve the names of the committee.
Second.
A motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. If there is nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.